So today we have the story of Daniel, a Russian soldier who was forced into an assault unit, who explains how he had to kill his fellow soldiers as they hid from Ukrainian drones. It's a wild story. I mean, we've got a real look at the process that Russia is going through of sending these guys on one-way missions, what they pack for that mission, how they get resupplied, and a personal account of how it all falls apart and they turn on each other at the front. Now, this was an article just published in the Novaya Gazeta, which is an independent Russian newspaper. We'll have the full article linked in the description below. And it's a conversation with Daniel, who they say spent 2 months from February 17th to April 17th of 2026 in a Russian infantry assault unit. He was able to meet with reporters and told his story during the first 5 days of his captivity. Daniel says he started out as an artilleryman. Nobody wants to start in the assault units, right? Neither did Daniel. Started out as an artilleryman, but eventually got into arguments with his chain of command, and he was transferred into the infantry. He said, quote, "It was scary to end up in the 82nd Infantry Regiment. Everyone talked about it as a place where people were sent, supposedly, as punishment. If you didn't follow orders, if you didn't obey, they'd tell you, watch out, you're going to the 82nd, going to Volchansk, and that's where I ended up." Now, turning to a map to give you an idea of where this very short story, 2 months in combat, kind of, for Daniel took place. Eastern Ukraine, moving over here to Kharkiv, Volchansk, which is not getting a lot of attention. I mean, the fighting is still pretty heavy there. There's just not a lot of movement. This is Russian-held territory. As you look on the screen, this is Russia on the northern portion. The red is Russian-occupied territory in Ukraine, and the green is Ukrainian-held territory that they have since liberated from Russia, originally taken it in 2022. Volchansk here in the middle. The specific area that Daniel ended up fighting was right in here, this Hrovsky area. In fact, he talks about having to cross over a river. It was a river crossing back through this area. So northeastern Ukraine is where Daniel was fighting and where Daniel was eventually captured. Now, they start out by talking about the kind of how the process all begins. He says they were moved to a deployment point where they're down in a bunker. They had to fill out some forms about their family and next of kin, and there was a group of 10 of them. They were kind of watched over and loosely guarded. So not a prison-type setup, but he mentioned that they were definitely being watched the entire time. He said all of a sudden they got the notice. They'd been there about a week, and they said, it's time to go. Leave your stuff, so leave all of your belongings. They were moved under guard of sorts on a quad bike to the first release point. And what it looks like they're doing with these Russian soldiers is they're not really getting like a mission briefing or an outline of exactly what they need to do, even a task and purpose. It's just points on a map. Go here, then go here, then go here, then go here. And you'll see through the story, Daniel eventually gets a note like, you have to go into this house. And he doesn't know why. He doesn't know if it's occupied by Russians or Ukrainians or booby-trapped or any of that stuff. So the first point he is taken to on a quad bike, kind of under guard by Russian soldiers. And the reporter asks him, says, you know what you're getting into here. You have a weapon. Why are you not turning and firing on these guards and escaping? And he said, well, it wasn't really like an option. You're kind of like under guard until you get to that first release point. And then you're just on your own. So like there's not really anybody to turn on. You're just, you're kind of dodging Ukrainian drones at that point. He gets into the supplies that they're handed, and we've seen this. We'll play some footage here. These individual Russian soldiers moving across no man's land, the kill zone, we see them all carrying very similar packs, and Daniel outlines it. He says, quote, "We were given everything we needed for the attack. This is the standard for an assault. Worn but washed clothes in any size, some clothes in a backpack, and some boots simply tied to the backpack. Spare clothes weren't in bags. When we crossed the river, they all got wet." And he mentions that when they crossed that river in Russian territory, that's when everything just went to hell. Like from that point forward, they started getting watched, hit, everything just went downhill. He says they also give you a dry ration, a standard daily one divided between two people. One gets a gas burner in his backpack, and the other gets 2 gas cylinders for it. Then each gets 3 1.5-liter bottles of water, 2 grenades, an automatic rifle, 3 magazines, and loose ammunition. So loose ammunition, like bullets, like a handful of bullets. Maybe he has them in boxes, but that's what he's referring to. He says the backpacks are already packed, so there's nothing left to add. Each pair comes with a standard set of items, but the specifics vary depending on who's older and who's younger. The older soldier has an extension cable for the radio antenna. The younger soldier has extra batteries for the radio. So they're split off in pairs. And again, this is something that we see through the Ukrainian drone footage of these guys advancing forward. It is regularly 1 or 2, rarely more than 2. And they get into some of the reasons why it only ends up being one. Sometimes the person they're hunted down by Ukrainian drones. I mean, Daniel talks about this experience trying to move between rally points where he says, quote, "We were walking at night under the blankets, the anti-drone blankets. Then we heard something flying overhead, a Mavic, Baba Yaga, maybe referring to these kind of bomber drones that Ukraine operates. He says, I reported over the radio that I thought I saw a Baba Yaga, and they said, sit tight. We were sitting under the trees practically next to each other, and something hit my grandfather, ripping off something, a leg or an arm. I don't know. It exploded loudly, and I got a small piece of shrapnel on my leg. I got scared and ran away from those drones." Grandpa was the call sign of the other guy that he was with. He said he was probably 50 or 55 years old. It sounds like at that point he just left him. Like, good luck out here, dude. I'm out. So he keeps moving. It sounds like Daniel keeps stopping at these various dugouts along the way. And what it looks like is that as he kind of makes progress, he'll occasionally come across additional groups or individual Russian soldiers. He's asked during the course of this interview, how are you resupplied? Because again, if you go back to the beginning here, 3 bottles of water, 3 magazines of ammunition. And we should mention when it comes to the ammunition, like, yes, you want that when you're moving into a war zone. The vast majority of these Russians are never going to see a Ukrainian soldier. They're like, the majority of them are getting killed by drones before they even reach the line of contact. So they don't even have anything to shoot at. I guess they're probably trying to shoot down the FPV drones, but nonetheless, 3 magazines, not a lot. 3 bottles of water, not a lot. So resupplies have to happen. And we've talked about this in previous videos, how this is being done. He said all of the resupply is being done via drone. He said not quadcopters, but FPV drones, so strike drones, would fly into some spot without an explosive charge, all right? So instead of, an RPG warhead or some type of high explosive, that weight instead is like a water bottle. So he says FPV drones would just fly into some spot in the yard and crash, scattering everything. Usually, they'd send out square packets of porridge, rice, stew, etc., but they'd break upon landing. The impact when the drone falls was very strong. One drone could carry a can of stew, 2 roll-tons, so kind of packaged noodles, 4 chocolate bars, a power bank, and a square packet of porridge, plus cigarettes. That's the resupply. Hopefully it comes in and they'll keep you moving. But when you hear about Russian soldiers in some of these positions for months on end, that is how they're staying in the fight, is drones flying limited supplies towards them one at a time. Now, he said eventually at one of these positions in kind of a dugout, he got a radio call giving him the final directions to a point that he needed to go and occupy. He said it was the coordinates of a house. They went out together. He found one other guy that he was working with at this point. He said, quote, "It was really scary. You didn't know where you were going or why you were going." Again, mission brief is far too complex. That's not happening at all. It is literally, here is a house you need to go to. Daniel has no idea why he's going to that house or what to expect there. Now, by the time they got there, they kind of set up camp inside this building, inside this abandoned home, and decided to start scavenge for supplies. They don't know if they're going to be there for a night, a week, a month, or if they're just going to be forgotten. So they're starting to look around. What can they gather together to make life a little more comfortable? And in the process, they come across more Russian soldiers in this area. At this point in Daniel's story, there are 6 of them. 6 is going to pretty quickly become 2. Now, 6, you have Daniel and Senya, Amelia and Shah, Kit and Shmel, Shmel. And just one after the other. Like, this is where the story gets absolutely crazy. Everything up to this point is war. And it's kind of what we're seeing day in and day out. But from here forward, you've got Russian soldiers just deciding to kill each other. Like, it's wild. So they say they found a huge bottle of homemade wine. So they got a little drunk, started playing music on the radio and yelling. Then Senya and Shah came back to our house, the 2 of them with a bottle. Shah started arguing with Shmel, then arguing with Kit. And that's it. Senya kills Shah. When they asked him why, like, excuse me? And the reporter was great in this, I think. It's all written text, but you can hear, or you can see him saying, like, hold on, stop. You just, like, they just killed him? Well, what are you doing that for? Like, they're not even in contact with Ukrainian forces. They're just killing each other. And he says the issue here is Shah previously had bragged about killing his number 2, his buddy. So Senya figured, hey, I'm going to be next. We may as well kill him before he kills us. So that's some camaraderie for the front. We're down to 5. 6 Russian soldiers just turned into 5, 0 contact with Ukrainian forces. They say, then Shmel took me and Amelia, this is Daniel, then Shmel told me that Amelia was lying in the house next door and he needed to be taken care of. I guess it was Shah's number 2, So they were like, if we're going to kill one of the two in this pairing, we got to kill the other one. So he said, I don't know what happened there. I was sleeping at the time. I woke up to the sound of machine gun fire. So now we're down to 4 Russian soldiers. It was 6, down to 4. He says, a few days later, Senya was upset that Kit wasn't helping with cooking or gathering of supplies, so drunk Senya kills Kit. He was trying to hand a machine gun to Shmel to kill Kit, and it went off. Like he was planning on killing him and accidentally killed him in the process. I don't know. So now we're down to 3. We've got Senya, Shmel, and Daniel, the guy telling the story. And he says, quote, so it turns out we had to kill Senya. Just matter of fact. Because why not? He says, well, to stop him from threatening us. I guess he had been threatening the others at this point, and they were feeling a little bit uncomfortable. They said he just started shooting randomly in a drunken stupor, so he was killed. Now we're down to 2, Shmel and Daniel. That's it, 6-2, 0 contact with Ukrainian forces. And this is right about the time they get picked up by Ukrainians moving through and clearing this area. He says, the last week was the worst. We practically ate nothing. We intercepted our packages, then the bad weather set in. We had to collect rainwater to drink it. In general, they couldn't drop food on us there. Your groups, the Ukrainians, kept intercepting us. They said, what about ammunition and weapons? So they sent us 3 grenades, but that's it. There's no way they could have delivered weapons using an FPV drone, and then your group arrived, and we surrendered. You can understand in that situation why these Russian soldiers are surrendering. Right? And we're seeing this play out in multiple areas of the front where the infiltrators make it through to some position like this, and they sit there for days, weeks, or months, and the only resupply are these FPV drones coming in, and we're seeing that Ukraine is intercepting those more and more. So if you start to get left out there with no reinforcements, no resupplies, and the Ukrainian force comes, as they outline in this story, these guys kind of raise their hands and say, we're ready to give up. That was enough. Very few options, right? You're essentially just waiting there to die. So pretty crazy story here from Daniel outlining what it's like in these assault units right now. All of it kind of checked out. It was interesting to see like the detail that they go into with some of this, like the supplies and all of that and how they move from one point to the next. I was not expecting a first person account of, yeah, we just killed all of our buddies. Like he got drunk, so we had to kill him. He pointed a weapon at us, so we had to kill him. And we were worried that he might kill us, so we had to kill him. 4 Russians killed in the span of, I think it was a little over a week in this position. That's a pretty wild dynamic to this conflict. So anyways, if interested in reading the full report, we'll have that linked in the description below. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.